And we're on.
All right. Go ahead, David.
All right. I will introduce us today. Good morning, everybody. I am David DeLallo. Welcome to the GAI Insights Gen AI news briefing for today, which is Tuesday, which we were discussing is a terrible weather day up here in the Northeast. Hopefully it's better elsewhere. We have a nice agenda for you today. some things that I think will give us a bit of a chuckle. First is that we'll be talking about Apple, but don't get too excited. It's not about a product announcement. And we have a couple of articles from consulting firms, one about insurance, one about semiconductors, and some research to go through. So let us jump right in. Ankaj, kick us off with this first article, which I believe is the Apple article. And I will add you to the stage here. Oh, and we've got Paul joining us. We got a pretty full house today of analysts. This will be fun.
Okay. Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today is from Apple. So Apple researchers, they have published a new research in which they discuss a new model called RE-ALM or RE-ALM, which helps in resolution or getting context from images in a simplified manner. So yeah.
All right. So, Tim, can we get excited about this, or should we again congratulate the PR team over the Apple product team? Let us know.
I think it's a little in the middle, but mostly congratulations on the PR. It's a research article, number one. So again, this is something we don't know what they're going to do with. The only interesting thing in my mind about this is about basically capturing content off phones is the example they use, but any screen that has lots of stuff on it. These days, screens are quite complicated with all the banners and ads and this and that and the other thing. And so just making sense of the screen is a challenge, particularly a small screen. And that's clearly going to be helpful and clearly right in the wheelhouse for Apple. So no big surprise that they're working on recognizing images, turning them where they really represent text into text that you can feed into a language model, yada, yada, yada. The bigger idea that's interesting, and this will happen more and more and more, I don't think Apple's even thinking about this, but it's just natural for them since they're a huge phone manufacturer, is context. So large language models, we talk about context windows and this and that and the other thing, their context is basically nothing, very, very little. It's remarkable, in fact, one way to look at it is just how far they've gotten on so little context compared to the average human's contextual understanding of the world in which they're living and moving through. And this is the old AI to a certain extent, where there's an enormous amount of effort put into frameworks, because you have so much tacit and unconscious knowledge of everything that you do. There's just most of everything that happens to you never even gets to the surface. It's just all buried in all this context. So this is a tiny little example of a company paying attention to adding some context. And I think that's going to become much more crucial over time and will lead to enormous advances when they get above certain thresholds. So a little bit of interesting from the long-term vision perspective, that it's not just going to all be about large language models. It's going to be about building up these frameworks and context around these models to make them much more effective. This particular article, interesting to read, but not particularly relevant to the day-to-day executive.
So optional, what I'm hearing.
Optional. Sorry, long-winded optional.
But David, I want to note for the record, an optional but a particularly impressive paragraph that Tim just gave.
That's right. That's right. Very good commentary. Also, this is another example where they're clearly working on solving problems related to putting the models on the phone, right? Again, this is
right
what we're going to see, right?
It's not Apple thinking about context and frameworks. This is Apple saying, we have phones.
Right.
Building phones.
Make no mistake, they want the context of the screen, to be understood so that, you can oh boy, my fire alarm's going off, so I'm going to have to mute myself. I'm moving in a couple of weeks because this happens all the time. Sorry, you guys take over for a second.
Great. So let's go next article, Ankash.
Okay, so the next one is from Yum Brands. So Yum Brands is looking to expand its use of GenAI.
All right, I'm back in action. It's off. This is the ongoing problem here, and hence why I'm moving in 4 weeks.
Good. I
Tony,
think
you were reviewing the
they,
point, right?
yeah, he assigned it to me. So I gave the article a important, and I'll explain why. I know that last year we reviewed, what McDonald's is doing and Wendy's, but I gave this an important because I feel like this article went more than just, oh, we're using AI. Like they really explain their integrated strategy around AI. They're using it to improve internal operations. They talked about this application, this mobile application called Super App, that they're looking at using that so that employees can ask questions to it and kind of move away from traditional training. And then they're looking at expanding this mobile app capability to do more things. I think they talked about, helping them with their shift scheduling, helping with ordering ingredients. So there's definitely more coming around that. And then on the other side, so that was kind of like on the internal side. And then on the customer side, they also have an AI strategy there that the article talks about, using AI voice, for ordering. I think they also talked about AI vision to kind of see, how long the queues are, when people are going through drive-throughs. And then they also, somewhere in the middle, they talked about using AI also for their supply chain management and the ability to, kind of see where they are on different ingredients and then automatically order them. I think I also saw something about kitchen appliances and using AI to do management. So I was thinking maybe like, I don't know, knives, when do you have to clean them or something like that? But it just seemed like they really had a comprehensive strategy around AI that we haven't heard from the other fast food restaurants. And, they got some big brands, right? I mean, they own Taco Bell, KFC, and some other ones. So I gave it unimportant. I think it's worth the read. And it was well written. It was an easy read.
Yeah, and it was short. We do tend to temper our excitement when they talk about pilots. So I wonder if anybody has a counterpoint on this one, but I think you made a very good case.
I think it's important. I think we should have a category of articles called back pocket articles. And I would put this in that category, which is, whenever somebody says this stuff isn't real, or they're asking me who else is doing this, you just have a bunch of things like this in your back pocket. You could pull out and say, well, Yum Brands is doing this pretty comprehensively. It's not a huge amount of money yet, but they invested $21 million this year, according to this article. That is a lot of money in the first year, effectively, right? Last year was kind of fooling around. This is really the first year. And they've invested $21 million across a variety of things. The other thing that I think is worth reading about this is it's a combination of AIs. It's not just generative AI. It's generative AI plus machine vision, plus voice recognition, plus customer targeting, all sorts of different AI, not just generative AI. And I think that's the rule that organizations need to follow, use the right tool for the job. So I think it's good. And I think always good for executives to have these kind of back pocket articles to refer to.
All right, we've got a second. Any other commentary or anyone feel that they're not happy with this rating?
Yeah, I was actually on optional, but I think Tanya and Tim made a case for a use case strategy. So they don't quite report that they've implemented things that are in production. They're really talking about it, how to pull together a comprehensive strategy. And for that, I think that's okay to give it in my book. You've convinced me to go to important.
All right, we will go with important on this one and let us move on to the next one, Akash.
Okay, so the next one is from Bain & Company, and it talks about some of the use cases for generative AI in insurance distribution.
Luda, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I was between optional and important. So optional, it's a there's nothing really new in this article per se. We've been talking about and specifically insurance in the WINS framework, that this will be very massively hit by Gen AI and AI in general. So there's nothing really new here. The reason maybe to consider important on this article, because of if you scroll down, Ankash, there are several graphics that actually take it through distribution channels and highlight this one and highlight the impact. On the top are various agents that engage with insurance to distribute the insurance products. And then on the left, on the y-axis, is the various applications that can be used in insurance industry. So, and the gray is not much impact. The orange is medium impact, and the dark is the higher impact. So it's not surprising that the more digitalization you have, the more impact you have on the right. And then there's another chart going down a little bit, Ankash, that talks about you can actually do it gradually, and it spells out the how you can roll it out over time. So that's an important also angle for the insurance industry. So for the insurance industry, as another use case, like we just talked about for B2C retail channels, right, or restaurants, this is another one that is a short read, very good, respectable source, maybe important. But I was an optional.
Yeah, one quick thing about this chart. I mean, if they're trying to sell engagements around generative AI, I'm not sure they're like effectively making themselves a case with this chart, right? They're pretty much saying that it's low value to do a lot of the use cases that we see being executed right now, and that are kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? Like knowledge management, agent assist,
or David, would the case be that the higher value ones are higher risk, so you better get someone in to help you with them?
Well, but like if you're just reading this on your own, my interpretation is like, okay, everyone keeps talking about, oh, I should fix my internal search. I should make a knowledge assist. Oh, wait, that doesn't actually make me a lot of money. So maybe I'll just table this until the upper right corner stuff is less risky for me to engage in. And one other comment on this, if you scroll down a little bit, I do give these guys kudos for going right at the people issue and not skirting what's really going to happen here. There's a couple of bullets, I think, if you scroll down a little bit, where they explain where the value will come from, 3 areas, and 2 of them are kind of like screwing the human. One area is resizing the business, which we mean, getting rid of people, and the other is reducing commissions, which would also go to the humans. So I mean, I guess I give them credit for not pretending as a lot of the other consultancies are, but that's I would go optional on this because
I've done a lot of extensive multi-year studies of the use of AI in insurance distribution, and I think this is a really weak article. It doesn't get into any of the real dynamics, in terms of what it's going to do with customers. I think they just, took the process conceptually, broke it down into a bunch of arbitrary categories, and then categorized them incorrectly, I think. So I'd give it mega optional.
I had optional as well, but I said, if you're insurance, maybe you want to take a look at, or if you're a leader and you're trying to figure out, to Luda's point, you're trying to figure out how to visualize, right? How to put a visual to roadmaps and in the AI journey, right? I really like this figure 2 of the risk and the value, right? And plotting things down, and wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. So from that perspective, there's some helpful things, but there was nothing earth-shattering in the content.
Kind of with John, though, I don't know if I found this accurate or the other chart potentially, but
right. I love how in less than 18 months, all the consulting firms are now complete experts in the 10-year future of generative AI, to John's point.
You need them. All right, we're going optional on this one with a lot of fun commentary, by the way. So sorry, Bain, we do like you, but we didn't love this article. What's next?
Okay. So the next one is a research paper. It talks about how if you remove certain percentage of layers of large language models, they still operate at the same level of effectiveness.
All right, very long research paper about pruning. Adam, what do you think about this?
Interesting, not really earth-shattering. We've discussed even, I'd say, 4 or 5 months ago, maybe even now, about some of the techniques with regards to pruning large language models, and that there wasn't much of a degradation in the performance. So they might have come up with some new techniques. Mostly this is around question answering tasks and the fact that you could get rid of half of the deeper layers in the model. And for things like question answering, there was minimal performance degradation when it comes to the inference. So interesting, but optional, really.
I agree with optional, but as I was reading that, I don't know, it's scary to me because you're essentially taking layers out and they're saying you need to do some fine tuning and whatnot, and the results are the same. I doubt the results are the same. I just think they don't see the results. I think they're altering the overall mechanism behind the training model. So my gut says dangerous path.
I don't know. I think this whole market is still dog catches car. As most technology markets are. Something gets popular, immediately fans out. This one's so fast, and so everybody sort of gets rigor mortis really fast, and it's just trying to fix what we already have. And there's so much possible fix. This is just math. I'm not afraid of it. I mean, this is just like saying, oh, if I put a few less pixels in the picture, can anybody notice?
Right.
And it turns out it's incredible. I worked in music a long time ago in music synthesis. It's incredible how little information you can transmit, and the human brain will actually reconstruct the rest. So the question is, what kind of compression techniques work? And QLoRa has been popular now for quite a while and been quite effective. And that's just the first one. So again, we're going to see lots of stuff like this. And it just points out how early we are in this market, and the predictions that people have of various things are wildly speculative.
Yeah.
It's optional unless you're really into this stuff.
If it does work, it's impressive. I mean, they cut the model down by size by half. I mean, that's pretty significant.
But that's typical of LoRa and QLoRa techniques now for quite a while. They're a little better, especially on the larger models, but this has been well understood now for almost a year or more into this whole thing.
I think, if anything, what's important is it highlights how little we actually understand about how these things are working, these GPTs. Absolutely. The last sentence there pretty much highlights it. It says either, we're not properly leveraging the parameters in the deeper layers of the network, or the shallow layers play a critical role in storing knowledge. But the truth is that we still don't understand how these things work.
But they work.
Probably the most fascinating outcome.
They work. To me, that's the definition. The commercial market doesn't care particularly how they work. They just care that they work. And then they find problems. Oh, they're expensive. They consume a lot of energy. They're slow. So then they start fixing those things.
Yeah, Tim, they do care if they get sued.
Well, that's another whole issue. Right.
It is impressive.
That has nothing to do with the technology layers.
No. But when you say the businesses don't care, I was just saying that.
You're right. No, they care about many parts of it. They care if it's too slow. They care if it's too expensive, but they don't particularly care about the technological and mathematical underpinnings at that level once it's working.
Right. So there is really an impressive. In the introduction or later, they're referring to many pruning techniques. I started counting, but it was more than 20 with the prior tries. And so this is yet another different technique with taking layers out. So I'm concerned about how they're measuring it and how they're saying they're fine-tuning it. So I don't know whether they're measuring the quality. They're mostly focused on cost, really.
Yeah. So no one can ever replicate some of these, right? Unless you get in the room with these guys, and they probably don't even remember everything they did. So we will go, all right, great discussion on that one. We will go with optional for it. And we'll move on to a different topic here of semiconductors. Take it off, Pankaj.
Yeah. So the next one is from McKinsey, and they're talking about the next S-curve for the semiconductor industry.
Oh, this seemed like a missed opportunity for me. John, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm less negative. Our banter before. I'm less negative on this than folks think. I would put it as important. I think it's not a bad analysis of what some of the future demands might be. It lays out what they think the relative impact will be on different parts of the chipset, and how we're going to need at least 3 to 5 new fabs for some of the foreseen demand, and typical 3-level analysis of kind of base case, moderate, aggressive growth and adoption. I do think they missed some big markets, and you can see here in this that it's the innovation market that consumes a lot of the compute time, which makes a lot of sense to me. Complex large language models, but that includes, of course, molecular models and material science models, and those are the relative value of those is going to be huge to pharma and to anybody who's worried about material science, like the folks at any of the defense contractors. They're way at the leading edge of material science, and lots of hydrocarbon producers and so forth. So I think that was okay. I'd give it like optional to important. I think they missed a couple of massive markets. One is defense, and weapons and so forth, and the other is surveillance. I think China's shown us that there's going to be surveillance, there's going to be counter surveillance, there's going to be there's going to be a cat and mouse game between cloaking yourself with AI versus being discovered with AI. I think those are going to be big markets. So I'd put it as optional on the border of important.
Yeah, my rant on this before the call, McKinsey is my former employer, and I used to work on pieces like this, without saying anything that'll get me in trouble. It's very obvious that this one got, kind of just thrown up on the website and wasn't touched by a real editor. It's really difficult to read. I think it's like trying to follow this last night at 10:30, my eyes were crossing. I had to read paragraphs over 3 times because I really wanted it to be good, because I felt, okay, even though it's poorly written, maybe the analysis is very valuable here. But yeah, it was a struggle. And I mean, one takeaway out of this, okay, John, would you make a portfolio move on this? Because they're actually predicting that GPUs will not be highly in demand in the next 5 years. They're saying basically that inference is going to be really what's happening, that we're going to be past training big models, and we're not going to need the equipment for that as much anymore, which they're saying GPUs are better, and therefore the demand for them is going to be low in 6 or 7 years. Do you agree with that?
No, fair enough. I mean, I think I certainly wouldn't make a portfolio move based on it. I think I just like the fact that they're trying to do capital substitution for labor in the context of certain scenarios at a level of specificity which is greater than most of the folks I've seen.
Yeah. And John, I also want to note for the record, David's critique of this, which shows yet again McKinsey's mistake of letting David walk out the door. This article would not have been published had.
That's right. That is true. Absolutely.
Well, this is also lack of knowledge too, right? So I think I can tell you what happened here. People in publishing probably looked at this and they're like, semiconductors, who cares? If you're not in the AI space, you don't realize everybody cares about this right now, even though sometimes you can see it as a niche thing. Right now it's in the news all the time, right? So they should have given this some love, because it probably would have gotten a lot of attention if they have had.
Yeah. I agree with John that the better research foundation and analytics here, but I also still think, and John, you said you wouldn't make a portfolio move on this. You got to do your own work right now, because it's so wild west that you could take any of these and say, well, they're just wild swags, and they could be off by orders of magnitude because nobody really knows how it's going to develop. So that's why you can. It's still worthwhile to do these things. Somebody's got to put some stakes in the ground, and hopefully some decent research behind it. But they're just stakes in the ground. You have no idea what's really going to happen.
Famous quote. Sorry, the famous quote from Eisenhower. The plan is nothing. Planning is everything. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, it's built on sand. It is a massive issue, right? To know what the costs will be and what we would need, but this is built on a lot of assumptions that might or might not be true. So I'm optional on this one.
All righty.
All right, Mackenzie, we're going optional. And we have one more.
Okay, the next is from the Wall Street Journal, and it talks about how the internet is too small for the GenAI companies, and also touches a bit on the synthetic data bit.
All right, Paul, you want to comment on this one?
Sure. Yeah, I had it as important just because it comes from the Wall Street Journal. I think for our AI leader, they need to understand how much of a king sport this is becoming. AI developers are getting $1 to $5 million cash in equity. It's taken $5 to $15 billion to do this. If they thought they were getting squeezed by AWS and Oracle in the last 10 or 15 years, I think they have no idea what's coming as we see this thing keep growing. And if some of the predictions out there they're correct, the AI internet's going to become a streaming one sitting on clouds with smaller models on devices. That's just more power for Microsoft and Google and perhaps Amazon to dominate that. So I think the power shift is happening faster than anyone realizes.
All right, we've got a vote for important. Any other thoughts or?
Yeah, I would say important. To me, the 24 and 25 are the years of data. And if organizations don't get their act together in terms of understanding, do they have proprietary or preferential access to data, and whether that data is, words, numbers, or images or sounds, or, I just think that you got to be really careful dealing with these big companies like Mayo that deal with, Google, and, they're going to come looking for your data, and you got to be super careful not to give them preferential contracting terms. And the other thing is that because the economies of scale of knowledge, I think, are all over the place. Put another way, certain niches, I think, with relatively small models, you'll be able to dominate. And I think that you have to really think through what data you're collecting, and a bunch of stuff, a bunch of interactions you don't currently think of as data, whether that's, pictures of things or customer, calls, or things that may not sit in your data archive, are now sources of value. If you just take the simple idea that my conversations with the model improve the model, take that in every dimension, somebody's interaction with your product or your service, somebody returning something, somebody commenting on something, somebody combining it with something else. These are all new sources of potential value that you need to think of, because these models can take all those breadcrumbs and make bread pudding out of them, So it's
John, I think it's such a great point. Keep going there and look at some of the articles we had today. So what if AWS or Microsoft go to all insurance companies and say, I will give you $1 to $8 million a year just for your anonymized chats that are going on with your customers. Insurance companies, oh my God, this is newfound money. It's a short-term gain.
I don't have to pay for Azure or whatever.
3 years from now, they're in the insurance industry.
Yeah, the way I think about it is, look, reality is getting more computable, and where you're going to get value from that reality will change over time. And you don't want to give it, certainly if you're going to do contracts with these people, keep them short and keep them liberal to you, right? Do not sign long-term data contracts with any of these jokers, because we have no idea, what it's going to look like. Back to the Yum Brands. I bet Yum Brands, it's Google's in there. I bet Yum Brands gave away the shop because they used to be owned by a bunch of private equity folks. I bet that, they're just looking at, oh, great, we can pump earnings over the next, 3 to 5 years. They're not looking at the long-term implications. Like, who owns the data coming off the cameras from those from those locations? Who owns the information about the cars going through the drive-through? I wouldn't be surprised if Google got all that.
Yeah, that's why the regulations, right? That like what Europe came up in protecting the individual's privacy, and the individual should know where the data about ourselves are out there. Like, we need to adopt more of that in the U.S. Like, we really don't have protection as an individual.
But we're going the other way. I mean, it was always true, and it's even more. I think it's even more true in terms of, especially the Supreme Court and so forth. You got them. Your rights are only in direct proportion to the dough you have to chase them. I mean, if you have a lot of dough, that's great. You may own it on paper, but you don't own it until you can get in court and win it. And
I would. By the way, I think we need to put Meta in the conversation more because of this.
Yeah.
We don't think about Meta, but they have the catbird seat in terms of access to data right now. And absolutely. I think there'll be a lot of development here around the use of data and how you use data to train these models. Again, these are first efforts, and everybody just took everything they could gobble up, no matter pretty much what the quality, and it worked. And they're like, oh my God, dog catches car one more time. But what we haven't figured out is there much better ways to train these models? Is there a curriculum, not to be too anthropomorphic, that might be much more effective? And then you're going to see people chasing after the data to fulfill that curriculum.
Yeah, we need to see more research. And we need to see less research on pruning the models after the fact, right? More research on how do we actually train them up front a little bit more efficiently.
And what data to use,
that starts to address the infringement problem as well. So, there's just all sorts of reasons that I'm with you, John, in terms of data being a crucial issue over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think we need a new word. It's not data, it's reality samples or something. You know what I mean? It's much bigger than data.
John, just to highlight, and think about the deal that they would struck. You would go to a PE firm or Yum and say, we'll give you 3 years of improving gross margin deal right now with a 10-year access to that data. They take in a second to get out of the holding period.
Right.
And can you make this full screen, please? And then what? Think of it like a new claim on a title if it was a physical property. All of a sudden, you're going to buy this property and you realize, oh my goodness, there's somebody sold off the mineral rights and they've sold off the air rights and whatever. You know what I mean? Anyway, the option value of the reality that these businesses sit within can be tremendously valuable, and you do not want to sell that future, unknowingly. David, we need to get a quote board for this. I think John just came up with another one: the optionality value of reality bites. Is that what I heard?
Well, here's an interesting thing. We talked 20 years ago about health data banks. Because right now, all your health data just gets stolen away as well. Everybody claims it but you, but it's your data. It's your health, right?
Everything. Your utility data, your movement data.
People in creating banks, because again, the data you have by yourself is very valuable to you, but not valuable to anybody else in particular. But the data of 1 million people, hugely valuable to a lot of people.
Tim, I think we're already seeing that. I think there's a vibrant market for your location data on all our smartphones.
Right.
Yeah.
So, just going to expand more and more.
We need new property rights, baby.
Over time, dramatically.
Yes, we're well over time.
All right.
People stayed engaged. There's still people on here. We can still.
What happens when everyone shows up, David?
Everybody liked the discussion, so I let it go. We were actually accumulating viewers as we were talking instead of losing them. That's always a good thing. So we ended up with that. In the end, we only ended up with 2 out of 6 important articles. So
there we go.
The Yum Brands article was important, and this last one, obviously, that triggered quite a bit of discussion about data as important. The rest were optional. Any announcements to end with quickly, Paul or John? How was the Learning Lab last night?
Great.
Good. Yeah.
It was very good. I should have it posted later today. It was very good, and I think we're continuing to
very practical.
Yeah, it was about how a guy at a private equity firm is really helping marketing reinvent itself in the context of small companies.
If you're an AI leader, hugely valuable just to see people actually doing real stuff in real organizations. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, with small budgets and big impact.
Yeah,
very good. All right, great discussion today. We will see everybody tomorrow. Thank you for joining and have a great day.